So one of the biggest topics in new motherhood is how your infant is sleeping. We're going to talk a little bit about how babies sleep and things that you can do to help encourage good sleep habits. In the beginning, your baby is going to sleep all the time. Newborns actually sleep sometimes around 20, even more hours a day. The thing that makes it really tough is that they don't sleep in big chunks. They sleep in little chunks. And so when you're sleeping, when they're sleeping, you're not getting a consistent amount of sleep. And that's why people are always talking about how tired they are in the very beginning. So your baby will sleep in about 2 to 3 hour chunks most of the time. They'll wake up to eat, and then chances are they'll go right back to sleep fairly quickly. Now we're going to go over what does a safe sleep environment for your baby look like. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that babies sleep on their own sleep surface in the parent's room for the first 6 to 12 months of life. Then when the baby is 6 to 12 months old, you can move them into their own room. But again, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that babies have their own sleep surface in your room. That way you can hear them, they're in the room with you, so you can respond to their needs. Also, baby can hear you. This is challenging in that, you roll over, baby hears you, and baby wakes up a little bit. So it's challenging because baby may be waking up a little bit more frequently, but we've discovered that this is actually protective for the babies against something called the sudden infant death syndrome, which we will talk about in just a bit. But a little bit more about what a safe sleep environment looks like for a baby. First of all, think about the temperature of the room. The ideal temperature for a baby is about 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the temperature of the room. It's nice to have some type of circulating air in the room, so you don't necessarily need a fan like right on the baby, but have a fan in the room or an air filter or something that's making the air in the room move. When you put your baby to sleep, we always want to put them to sleep on something that was specifically designed for sleeping. A crib, a bassinet, something like that. We don't want to put babies to sleep in a car seat or in a swing because things that are too upright can be dangerous because the baby's head can sort of slump down and they don't have the ability to lift their chin up and it can block their airway. The baby's sleep surface should have a very firm mattress, so no really squishy mattresses or water mattresses or water beds or anything like that. It should be very firm. There should be absolutely nothing in the crib or bassinet with them. No bumpers, no pillows, no blankets, no toys, no pacifier holders, nothing at all in the crib with them. The reason for this is that babies don't yet have the strength to move their neck. So if there's a pillow, say, in the crib with them, and the pillow falls over their face, they don't have the ability to move their head or to push the pillow off, and it can obstruct their breathing. Also incredibly important is that baby needs to be put to bed on their back. I think many of us were probably put to bed on our bellies and on our sides, but the new research is finding that by putting babies to sleep always on their back, so you can think about back to bed, it significantly reduces the rate of sudden infant death syndrome. A couple other things, we want to make sure that the crib or the bassinet that we're using is up to current safety standards. Older cribs, sometimes the slats on the side of the cribs can be too big and arms can get stuck. And some older cribs have the side that comes up and down, and that can be a danger to children. So whatever sleeping device you use, make sure that it's one that is up to modern standards of safety. Lastly, you want to make sure that there's no space for the baby to get wedged. So we want to make sure if you're using a crib that the mattress fits really well in the crib and there's not a little gap, because the baby can become wedged again in between the mattress and the crib, and that can cause some injuries for your baby. The next topic we're going to talk about is a difficult but really important one. Sudden infant death syndrome, also known as SIDS, happens within the first year of life, and it's when a baby essentially dies, often for unknown causes. The rates are low, so I don't want you to spend a lot of time stressing about it, but it is really important to understand how to minimize the risk of SIDS for your baby. Things you can do to help prevent SIDS are maintaining a really safe sleep environment. Also, we never want to smoke around a baby, so, and this includes secondhand smoke. So anyone in your family that smokes really should not be coming near the baby after they've smoked. If they have any smoke on their skin or on their clothing, it can be harmful for the baby. Putting your baby on their back to sleep dramatically reduces the rate of sudden infant death syndrome. So ultimately, again, we don't want you to spend too much time stressing about sudden infant death syndrome, but it is a really important thing to be aware of so that you can take the precautions and feel confident that you've done everything in your power to keep your baby as safe as possible. This next topic is a controversial one. We're going to talk about bed sharing. The American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend any form of bed sharing as safe. However, a recent study found that up to 75% of moms reported falling asleep with their baby at some point during their baby's infancy. So, chances are, given that statistic, at some point you will fall asleep with your baby. And so we think it's important to teach you the very basics of safe bed sharing, not that we're necessarily encouraging it as the right option for your family, but if there's ever a situation where it's possible that you could fall asleep with your baby, just to know that you're doing it in the safest way possible. Ultimately, this is a very personal decision and one that you can make with your pediatrician and based on the needs of your family. But people who safely bed share, first of all, there's absolutely no bed sharing if there's any alcohol or drug use with the parents, because if you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, you're going to have less awareness of where your baby is in the bed. Also, no bed sharing unless it's the parents. So grandparents, siblings, dogs, nobody else should be in the bed. The theory behind that is that parents are more connected to their babies, so they're going to be a little bit more in tune with their baby's movements. Technically, when you bed share, the mattress should be on the ground so that should baby roll off of the mattress, they don't have a long way to go before they hit the floor. There shouldn't be any extra pillows or heavy blankets or anything in the bed that could fall on top of the baby and potentially suffocate them. Nothing else in the bed, so making sure that your cell phone charger isn't in the bed, or moms, if you have long hair, make sure that you tie that up. Nothing that's in the bed that could potentially wrap around a baby's neck. We also want to make sure that the baby can't get wedged in between the mattress and the headboard or the mattress and the wall. Just sort of doing a scan and making sure that there's nothing potentially dangerous. Even things like the cords of the blinds of a window, anything that could potentially wrap around a baby could be a potential hazard. One of the problems that unfortunately we see is that parents are very dedicated to not bed sharing, but we're exhausted, right? And when you're that tired, sometimes it can be a little hard to predict how your body's gonna react. Even if we have the best intentions of not sleeping with our baby, our bodies are tired and sometimes we fall asleep. So what happens is we'll go out onto the couch with our baby because we think we'll stay awake if we're on the couch, but then we fall asleep, and now we've fallen asleep with our baby on a couch. We could drop our baby, the baby could get wedged next to us. So really, the point of this is just to say, again, ultimately you have to make the sleeping arrangement decision that works best for you and under your pediatrician's guidance. But in any situation you're in with your baby, you just want to do a scan of the room, of the area, just to make sure, is this situation safe? Should I fall asleep? topic of sleep training your baby is a huge one. There could be an entire class devoted to just teaching your baby how to get really good sleep habits. So we're going to give you a quick overview. The current research is showing that really we shouldn't implement any type of sleep training before the baby is at least 4, probably closer to 6 months old, because in the beginning it's really, they just don't have the brain development to be able to learn any of these habits, so it's probably not going to work very well. And there's reports that it may be healthier for the baby if we start sleep training a little bit later in their life. The word sleep training is really a very broad term to describe training your baby how to sleep well. This is going to look different for every family. It's also going to look very different depending on how old your baby is. Newborn babies have very, very different sleep patterns and goals than a 1-year-old baby. So things that are possible for a 1-year-old baby are not possible for a newborn or a 3-month-old or 6-month-old. So as your baby grows, their normal expected sleep habits are going to evolve. So it's really important to be sensitive to that as you're sort of picking your sleep goals. Saying I want my 8-week-old to sleep through the night probably won't happen because they just don't have the ability to do that yet. But your sleep goals for your 2-year-old, if you would like them to sleep through the night, that is certainly a possibility. So just having sort of an awareness of where your baby is. And then when you think about sleep training, thinking about how you want to go about the process. There are a range of philosophies around sleep training, a range of research and studies and lots of details that you can get into. With a newborn, I really wouldn't even recommend thinking yet about sleep training because 4 to 6 months from now is a long time away. So instead of sleep training, now is a really good time to start thinking about creating really healthy sleep habits so that if and when you decide that you want to do some form of sleep training, you already have a foundation, a base of good sleep habits to build off of should you decide to train them. Let's talk now about some healthy sleep habits that you can start to create from day one. One of the nicest things that you can start to do with your baby is creating a bedtime routine. It feels a little silly sometimes when you have a newborn because they don't really understand that you're reading to them or singing to them, but it's a really, really special time with your baby, this sort of twilight time right before you're settling into bed at night. And starting a routine now is helpful for them, and it's also really helpful for you. So a really nice bedtime routine, starting about 60 minutes before when it's time to go to bed for the night. TV goes off, lights get dim if possible, everyone starts to talk in sort of quieter, hushed tones, just to sort of set the tone for sleeping. When possible, no screen time. When we look at a screen, the light really affects our ability to have a good night's sleep. So if you can have a, screen time down moment at night, that would be great for you and for the baby. Bedtime routines shouldn't be very long. A 15-minute bedtime routine is more than enough. When your baby becomes a toddler, they are going to become masters at extending the bedtime routine. And so it's nice to set some boundaries so that bedtime routine doesn't become this 2-hour-long event every night. So you can give them a bath. You don't have to give them a bath, but sometimes that can be a nice soothing part. Give them a bath, read them a story, sing them a song, and go to bed. One of the concepts we talk about a lot when we talk about sleep training is something called sleep associations. A sleep association is basically something that we need in order to fall asleep. Babies, kids, grown-ups, we all have them. So an example for you might be, you develop a sleep association with your partner being in bed with you. And then the partner goes away on a trip and you're sleeping alone, and you have a much harder time falling asleep because you're used to your partner being there. Or, there are people who can't fall asleep unless they read for 20 minutes, or they have a big glass of water next to the bed. We all have our sleep associations. Children and babies have them too. Oftentimes, a sleep association is eating, a bottle or nursing before bed. Sometimes it's rocking, sometimes it's being driven around in a car. Basically, it's something that the baby needs in order to fall asleep. A sleep association in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem until it becomes a problem. When it becomes a problem, it's because, we sleep in cycles. Babies do too. Their cycles are a little different than ours, but when we sleep as humans, we have periods of really deep sleep and periods of really light sleep. When you're in a period of really light sleep, it's very likely that you will wake up a little bit. When you don't have a sleep association, you can fall back to sleep very quickly. But if we do have a sleep association, we now need that association to fall back asleep. So if a baby has a sleep association with being rocked, every time they come out of light, they have their light sleep period, they're going to need to be rocked in order to fall back asleep. Now, I say this is not a problem until it's a problem because this is a very personal for your family. Some families are fine with that. Some families are okay waking up. They're okay rocking their baby to sleep or nursing their baby to sleep. And if that's you, then by all means, that's totally fine. But if you get to a point where it is becoming a problem, then working on the sleep associations can help to alleviate sleep problems that you're having down the road. So as the parent of a newborn, we're not going to spend any time talking about real sleep training, but you can just have in the back of your mind this concept of sleep associations and thinking about how to create sleep associations that work for you and your family and that you're comfortable with long term. So, it's very normal in the beginning for your baby to fall asleep every time they nurse. So don't stress about it at this point. In an ideal world, as baby gets older, they will learn how to fall asleep drowsy but awake, meaning that we're putting them in their crib or their bassinet when they're still awake but drowsy, so that they fall asleep without whatever their sleep association is. You can think about things like white noise. Do you want to have white noise be a sleep association for your baby? Something that's a good one to consider is making sure that the room is really dark, teaching them to sleep when the blinds are totally drawn. Again, just thinking about things that work really well for your family and that feel sustainable for you, so that when you have an 8-month-old, you're not needing to rely on the sleep association that is now causing you a tremendous amount of exhaustion and stress. Sleep regressions are potentially one of the most stressful parts of parenthood. A sleep regression happens when a baby has been sleeping fine, and then all of a sudden they seem to have a setback in how they're sleeping. And as you can imagine, this can be really stressful. The story is often, she was such a good sleeper, we were getting 6 hours in a row, and now all of a sudden she's waking up every 2 hours. So for good reason, this is a cause of some stress and frustration for parents. Sleep regressions often happen on an actual predictable schedule. They happen often because baby is going through some sort of developmental milestone. You can think about anytime you have a big change in your life, you have a new job, you've moved, just had an argument with somebody, anything that's big and stressful to you, you may lose a little bit of sleep over it. Babies are the same way, but the things that stress babies out are a lot different than the things that stress us out. When a baby has a new milestone, this is exciting, but it's also stressful to the baby. So you may see them experience a sleep regression. You may also see a sleep regression when babies are sick or teething, or if something and their environment has changed. If mom has been on maternity leave and goes back to work, if it's Thanksgiving and the whole family has come over and there's a lot of excitement, all of these things are good things, but they're stressful to a baby. Know that there is hope, that this is not forever, and then creating those really good sleep habits will help you work through these sleep regressions to get to a point where ultimately you're having sort of really solid, consistent sleep. Also know that there are people who are experts in exactly this. They're called sleep consultants. They're all over the country, and a lot of them can do like video chats. So if you're really starting to be concerned about your baby's sleeping, there is help for you. Certainly reach out to your pediatrician, but beyond that, there are people who this is their entire job, is to work with you and help you create sleep plans that work really well for your family.